Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me here in Chicago. It's great to be here, and we're getting towards the end of the school year. It's been about 2 years since I dropped out, and right now, all over the country, young people are doing the same thing that I was doing 2 years ago, finishing up their second semester at colleges and universities. This is true from big research institutions like Harvard and Stanford and MIT that are trying to change the way education works. All right. An invisible line there. And this is true from all the way from Harvard and Stanford all the way down to the small types of liberal arts colleges like the one that I went to, Hendrix in Conway, Arkansas. And incoming freshmen are told a familiar line, a line that they've heard so many times from parents, from teachers, from counselors, from politicians, and it goes something like this. Go to college, show up for class, do your homework, get good grades, cram for tests, and after 4 years, you'll emerge as an educated young adult. And unfortunately, that's a lie. Going to college does not guarantee that you're going to be employed. It's not breaking news to say that the old promise of going to college to get a job to be successful doesn't hold true today. The New York Times last year called the current crop of college graduates Generation Limbo, because 44.5% of them are unemployed or working jobs that don't require their degree. These are people who have college degrees and end up working as baristas or bartenders. In 2010, the Chronicle of Higher Education did a study, and we're looking at what specific cases of underemployment there were around the states. And they found that there were almost 6,000 janitors who had PhDs. I don't think that those people were expecting to be scrubbing toilets upon graduation. And I think it's high time that people are starting to realize that just going to school and paying money and regurgitating information does not necessarily make you an employable adult. I lasted less than a year personally at college before I dropped out, and since dropping out, I've become an education activist and run this group called uncollegejob.org that Lee mentioned. And in the last 2 years, it's become an amazing resource and community to see people all over the world, literally all over the world, who've come together and found other individuals who are bound together by the methods of self-education. Today we provide online resources, we organize workshops, and we're launching a gap year program this fall to take an entire cohort of people through the year-long process of not going to college. I've also just finished this book for Penguin about hacking your education, and it profiles about 40 people that I interviewed who have done interesting things with their lives without relying on formal education. They've gone on to be entrepreneurs and artists and DJs and business leaders and people who work in oil companies. But the common thread is that what they do professionally has nothing to do with what they learned in the classroom. Some went to college, some dropped out, some didn't know at all. But what they do has nothing to do with class. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my own educational journey, how that phrased my perspective on education, and then a little bit about those stories and what it means for you, both as students and parents, how you can embrace these shifts in education. In my case, my schooling ended and my education began pretty young. In fact, at this point, I've spent more time outside of school than I have inside of it. My story started simply enough. I came to my parents when I was 12 and I said, I really don't want to go to school. And they laughed, of course. Because who wants to go to school when you're in fifth grade? It's not exactly the cool thing. You want to be out playing with your friends and climbing trees and building tree houses and all those kinds of things. But my parents took me seriously. And I said, hey, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that I might go back. Right? If I take a year off when I'm 12, school's still going to be there when I'm 13. I'm not going to fall out of the rat race. There are far worse things that could possibly happen. And they were resisting because, after all, schooling worked for them. My mom was, in fact, a public school teacher at the time, and believed in school's potential as a social equalizer and a chance for anyone to get a leg up in the world. My dad was an engineer, someone who saw school as a logical system with steps that had to be followed. But I saw the problem differently. I was wondering, what good is school if I'm not learning anything? I was sitting in the classroom for 8 hours a day, surrounded by people who didn't really want to be there, with teachers who couldn't really control them, and it ended up being a lesson in monotony. So my mom and I agreed to try homeschooling. And on the first day of what would have been 6th grade, we sat down at the kitchen table and did 4 hours of straight work. It was exhausting entirely. And at the end of that time, I've learned more today than I did in all of 5th grade. We tried replicating that session, but it didn't really work. Because we kept coming back to this question of why, if we're going to do something different, are we just replicating the environment of what exists in school? Around that time, I spotted an ad in our local newspaper for a not back to school night that was hosted by some local unschoolers, and they invited community members to come and learn about what they were doing. Unschooling is a self-directed form of homeschooling that was developed and advocated by educational luminaries in the 1960s and 70s, such as John Taylor Gatto, Ethan Illich, and John Holt. Unschoolers learn not through repetition and regurgitation, but by practical experience and individual exploration. Rather than complete tedious worksheets or go to class and fill out tests, we got to do things in the real world. And in finding this group of local unschoolers who were running this not back to school night, we found a vocabulary and a framework for the educational mindset that my parents and I were trying to wrap our minds around. And that was really, really hard. After all, it's really hard for anyone who's been part of a system, and 99% of us have, who've all gone to school, to figure out how we can think outside of that system and think that there might be other possibilities for choices. Both of my parents were products of the public school system, and it had worked pretty well for them. And the idea of leaving this path seemed really, really scary. But I have to thank my parents for believing in me enough to allow me to make my own decisions. And they said, hey, it's your life, go ahead, make your own choices. If you want to leave school for a year, go ahead, we'll see how it works. We'll check back in a year later and see what happens. My experience as an unschooler profoundly shaped not just the way that I think about systems, but my entire worldview. As an unschooler, my curiosity wasn't just limited to 15-minute blocks. I didn't just have to go to school. My learning didn't stop at the end of the day. I began to think about the lessons that school is implicitly teaching. Being told that I should be quiet and raise my hand to ask a question. Being told to follow the obedience of a bell when it rang. And it got me really thinking about, is this a place that encourages people to be self-directed, to be creative, the sorts of qualities and talents that encourage things like entrepreneurship that Lee just mentioned? Or are these things that train us to be employees, that train us to work in factories? And my conclusion was the latter. As an unschooler, the projects that I started could last weeks, months, or years, and at the end of them I had real accomplishments, not just grades on a piece of paper. So when someone asked what I was doing, I could point over and say, hey, I built that. I did that. And for the first time, I really felt like my education was something that I had control over. It was preparing me for the real world. So I didn't end up going back at the end of that year of 6th grade. In fact, I didn't go back to high school, and spent all of my years throughout middle school and high school being homeschooled, or unschooled rather. I helped build a library, I found mentors, I worked on political campaigns, I started a flower delivery business, I lived in France for half a year, I interned at startups in San Francisco. And I was able to do all of these things that I never would have been able to do had I been in the classroom. Because A, I never would have asked, and B, I never would have been given permission. I built my own courses of study and set my own standards of excellence. The unschoolers got together, we had cooperative classes, and we would keep each other accountable by setting and meeting our own goals. What was interesting is that when I didn't meet all my goals, the experience was energizing, not humiliating. My teachers, my mentors, and my fellow peers were more interested in how they could help me learn, how they could help me meet my goals, instead of how I compared and stacked up against others. And on a basic level, unschooling seemed to have worked for my peers and I. There were about 25 or so people who were within my age range, and we can read, we can write, we can count, at least as well as our public school counterparts. And most importantly, at least from our parents' perspective, we've all had the opportunity to pursue higher education. And I want to pause on this moment, on this note for a moment, because it's really interesting. Because one of the ways that I eventually convinced my parents to let me drop out was by saying, well, Sarah was unschooled and she got into Harvard, so it must be okay. Which seems really stupid and antithetical, right? To think that if you're outside the system and trying to define your own metrics and values, that you would still measure yourself by the same metric as everyone else. Far from falling off the radar at elite colleges and universities, homeschoolers and unschoolers actually have a really great track record with some of the most elite colleges and universities. It's actually heavily recruited by Princeton and Stanford, both of whom have had experiences with homeschoolers and unschoolers being some of their top students, because homeschoolers and unschoolers have the qualities that the best college students exhibit. We're self-motivated, we're self-directed, we've often done independent research, we get along well with others, we can interact with adults. We can do all these things that we hope that people can do by the end of college, but we've already done them by the end of high school. So when the time came for me to go to college, I threw myself into the process of trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. I visited more than 20 campuses, really intent on finding the school that felt right. And eventually I found a school in Arkansas called Hendrix College that I thought was right for me. And that fall, even though I'd been living and working in San Francisco for about 6 months, ironically at a startup that actually helps people get into college called Zinch, I packed up my things and I moved to Arkansas, and I felt like I'd done it. I'd beaten the traditional school system, I'd gone to high school and gotten into college, I'd proven that I could do what they said that I couldn't, and I was defining success on my own terms and fulfilling this American dream of going to college and achieving anything that I wanted to do. At least that's what I thought. But as it turns out, the dream wasn't all that I thought it was going to be. The signs were there right from the start. I recall distinctly on the first day of college, the faculty and administrators assembled the entire freshman class at convocation. And there were nice and interesting speeches that were very self-loathing, and they were saying that you were the smartest and the most capable of your generation, that we were there because it was the best place to be and that we were the best. And my heart sank because I knew that that wasn't true. I knew that this wasn't a place where I had reached the maximum. It was a place where we were being told that we were the local maximum. I was amazed that I could even listen to this rhetoric that was so obviously untrue. But we were eating it up. We were eating it up because we were darlings of the system. This was exactly what we'd been prepared for. We'd accepted the terms of the system in exchange for the reward of going to college. We jumped through all the right hoops, we checked all the right boxes, we'd gotten all the great SAT scores, and without realizing it, I bought into the same false hope as everyone else. And it took me 6 months in college to realize that that wasn't the end-all be-all of life. What amazed me first about college was how little the academics actually mattered. School was really a routine in existential judgment about how the lessons of mechanism and routine were thrust upon students. I got kudos daily for my thinking and my work. I was told that I was doing really well. And like all students, I came to see myself reflected in the grades that I was given. I got top grades at the end of the first semester, but instead of feeling excited or feeling satisfied and like I wanted to do more, I lost all interest. As the semester continued and I went back to school for the second semester, I felt more alone in school than I ever had as a non-schooler. The reason I tell this story is to make the point that education is not something that you do until you graduate from high school or university and get a degree. Being an independent thinker and learner is not a means to an end, whether that's a diploma or a degree or a job or a promotion. It's a lifelong commitment to being engaged, to being an active learner, to being present, to thinking critically, and most importantly, I think, to making your own decisions. Now, in theory, this is exactly what college is supposed to teach you, right? This is what it says on the nice review books that show up in your mailbox after you take the PSAT. They might send you T-shirts and send you letters that have glitters and sparkles that fall out when you open them. And it feels really good, right? It feels really good to be told that you're doing well. But the problem is that universities don't live up to their own admissions guidance. Those unemployment numbers for people under 25 with college degrees, I think, are the strongest case of that I can think of. As a young person, it's really scary to think about investing 4 years of your life and tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars when the average student graduates with $27,000 in debt, when there's not an actual prospect of a real job out there. But before I get talking about how we can figure out to succeed outside of the university, I want to spend a few minutes thinking about what a university or what school is supposed to do in the first place. We need to ask ourselves why, at least in theory, do we still consider a college degree to be important as a means of success? When I was considering dropping out of college, my parents and my professors and fellow students were all convinced that I was going to drive my life off a cliff. I had one fellow student told me that he knew about this because his brother dropped out and he moved home and still worked as a waiter in a restaurant. We were just absolutely aghast by this. Never had he stopped to think, well, maybe his brother actually enjoys that. Maybe his brother finds that meaningful. We were told that we all have to be successful in exactly the same way, and I found that very troubling. One day in the cafeteria, as I was leaving, I was having lunch with some acquaintances from an English class. And they were asking serious questions about what I was going to do outside of college. They were asking, how are you going to learn the skills you need to learn? How are you going to get a job? My favorite question, asked with complete sincerity, which was, aren't you going to miss all the beer and the girls at college? And I was flabbergasted that someone would actually ask that last question with complete sincerity. Because I wondered if that was really the point of going to college. When I regained composure, I retorted that A, I preferred guys and champagne, and thought that I'd find more of them in San Francisco than I would in Arkansas. And B, that if that's the point of college, there are a lot cheaper ways to do that than spending $50,000 a year on a liberal arts education. But I think this question speaks to a larger point, because it's really difficult to understand that the things that go on the college campus go on off the college campus too. Sure, there are teachers and mentors and libraries and internships and labs on the college campus. But those all exist in the real world too. What this means is this: if you're going to survive and to thrive in the modern world, you're going to have to take your education into your own hands, be responsible for it, whether you're inside of the university or outside of it. When you're a small child, or if you're going to explain to a small child what the university is, you might say it's a place that you go to learn things. And at least on the surface, this seems to be true. There are classrooms and professors and libraries and laboratories, and ostensibly they're all there to increase your knowledge. But is that really the case? In Academically Adrift, a research report that came out of NYU, I think it was 2 years ago now, researchers gave college students from a wide cross-section of colleges something called the collegiate learning assessment, which measured critical thinking, complex reasoning, and writing longitudinally over the course of 4 years of college. They found that 36% of those college students they surveyed over the course of 4 years showed no gains in critical thinking, complex reasoning, and writing after 4 years of college. That means that every year there are 5 million 22 and 23-year-olds graduating from colleges and universities. The average is to debt of $27,000, with no appreciable gains in the skills to be successful adults. That's scary and that's really sad. And I hope that we can change the system so that we aren't running headlong into vast amounts of debt without learning that much. So where do we turn when the university doesn't teach us? That's the real question. And unfortunately, there are lots of free ways to learn. It used to be that you could go to the library. But as Lee mentioned, colleges and universities, the best ones out there in theory, are putting their content online. 10 years ago, MIT started putting their content online through OpenCourseware. Today, we have edX, we have Khan Academy, we have Udacity, we have Courseware, we have all these great resources that are providing content for free online. And that's starting to replace the content in schools around the world. What this means for students is why, when given the choice between rolling out of bed and hiking across campus to watch a lecture on something that you don't really care about that much, would you choose that over sitting in bed and watching a high-quality TED Talk online? The things that we once thought of as being unique to a university, quality instruction, and engaged, interested community of learners, are now widely and freely available. They aren't limited to the bounds of an institution. I think as college becomes increasingly unaffordable and inadequate for millions of people around the world, these resources are only going to grow in importance. But learning skills is not the only function of college. And as Lee mentioned, the other parts of college, the experience, the signal, are increasingly important. And figuring out what you do with those skills once you learn them is the real challenge. I think that the second biggest function of a university is to provide students with a community and a network. All those orientations and activities that you do as a freshman are designed to reinforce the feeling that you're part of a community. And again, there are ways to build community outside of institutions. Colleges are great at fostering certain kinds of networks, fraternities, sororities, and other organizations can do that. But when it comes to actually breaking into a field that you're interested in, you're going to have to hustle to make connections. Join interest-based groups. Go to meetups. This is another great place where the internet has come in. Whatever your talent, whether it's music or journalism or reviewing bottles of wine, you can find communities of people online who are interested in things that you are and can support and push you. Another one of the secrets that they don't teach you in college is that most people don't get jobs by applying for them. They get them because of connections. According to leading human resources firms, 80% of jobs that are hired for are never actually advertised. When employers know that they're hiring, they ask their current employees, they ask their friends, who might be good for the job. These jobs are all part of the informal job market. And that's really important to keep in mind, because just going to college does not necessarily create a network. What is important to keep in mind, while the tools of building networks have changed, the basic skills needed to communicate have not. You still have to hustle and do the legwork to make those connections, and knowing how to pitch yourself and follow up are as invaluable as ever. The difference is that you no longer have to rely on the connections you made at college or university to get noticed. So if you have the knowledge, and you have a community of learners, and you have a network, what are you going to do now? You have to be able to show people and communicate that you have talent. And that can be really hard to do if you don't have a piece of paper. There's a reason that people display their academic titles and honors every chance they get. It's because those initials and those Latin names are shorthand for supposed accomplishments. Just like a peacock's tail is supposed to communicate its prowess, your degree shows your employer that you have some aptitude at something, even if that something is sitting in lectures and taking notes. For years, that was really good, and it was effective because not everyone had college degrees. But now we have more and more people going to college, and employers are demanding master's degrees and PhDs, not just bachelor's. Pretty soon, employers are going to figure out that when they get 1,000 applicants for a job and they all have college degrees, a college degree is meaningless in figuring out what skills and talents a potential employee has. Your network itself is a really important signal to potential employers. Savvy employers don't actually care about what courses you took for your GPA. What they do care about is checking on Facebook and LinkedIn to see what mutual friends they have with you. And they'll ask those friends what they think of you. They'll ask if you're confident, ask if you're smart, ask if you can follow through. Having someone respected vouch for you can be a golden ticket and be 1,000 times more useful than just a degree. Increasingly, digital reputations are beginning to supplant formal educational requirements. This is absolutely terrible news for people who wanted to skate through college and emerge with a degree. But it's great news for talented individuals who are willing to work hard. The same tools that you can use to build a network, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, are the same platforms that you can use to show off your competency. Some of the first people to embrace the shift away from traditional degrees are people who work in the creative and technical professions. They understand that your ability to design or write code has nothing to do with where you learned it. Nowadays, if a talented programmer or designer is looking for work, she won't send out resumes or post on job boards. Instead, she'll go to a site like Stack Overflow or GitHub or Behance and create a portfolio to show off what she's done. Coders and developers are at the forefront of this, I think, because their work is a product that can be easily evaluated. You can easily look and see what someone's done. And this is less so true if someone's trying to get a job as an anthropologist. However, what's interesting is that the company behind Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange, has a network of more than 96 different sites that have question and answer sites in 96 different career verticals. Everything from plumbing to electrical wiring to nursing. And it's not that difficult to imagine that in the future, you might be hiring a nurse based off of her profile on Stack Exchange, or whether or not your friends recommend her, rather than if she happens to be at your local clinic. There are other career paths where this is important as well. For example, for musicians, building a Facebook and especially a strong YouTube presence can be more important than getting a college degree. Proving that you have followers and that you engage with them is more telling about your abilities than simply a GPA. A term we're probably going to be hearing more about in the future is the reputation graph. And that's basically a way of measuring your influence and prominence in the world. It's a systematic way of looking at someone's digital reputation, and I think there will soon come a day when employers are looking at your reputation graph as much, if not more, than a college degree. As the old educational paradigms are being dismantled, the meaning of an education is really changing rapidly and radically. And it's not difficult to imagine that a young, ambitious engineer could take some MIT courses online, build a network through Twitter, and then get accepted as part of a fellowship program instead of going to college. And what I really want to drive home is that the changes that I talked about today are not far-flung hypothetical scenarios. These things are happening right now. They're happening because people are becoming disengaged. They don't understand why they're paying so much, and they want to learn on their own terms instead of being told what to do. But the real question for you here is this. If you're in high school, what do you do? How do you embrace these changes? How do you navigate a world where there are people like me telling you one thing and your parents telling you something else? We're wondering how schools are going to be more unschooled. How do we live in a world where we don't know what the skills that we'll need are in 5 years? What I think you should focus on then are meta-learning skills. The skills that make you a better and more effective learner. Skills like self-advocacy, self-evaluation. Learning how to find mentors. How to communicate your talents and building portfolios. You can develop these skills by making choices about how to learn, by starting your own projects, and realizing that grades are meaningless. What's really important is that these skills are the skills that will enable you to be adaptable and flexible. The two most valuable skills when it comes to employment if the future is unknown. And these are the skills that you're going to use every day for the rest of your life. In the real world, you have to learn things every day. And no one's going to tell you what to do, no one's going to give you an assignment, and no one's going to give you a grade. Curating your own education costs a fraction of the price of college tuition and can be orders of magnitude more meaningful. I hope that the thoughts and stories that I shared with you today change a little bit the way that you think about education and what an education is supposed to be. The tools are already here, you just need to start building, and I hope that you take the opportunity to take charge of your education and decide what you want to learn. If you're interested in learning more about the specific case studies of the people that I interviewed, you can check out my book. It's in the lobby. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this going? Wonderful. It is great to be back in Chicago. As they mentioned, I went to school down the road, and I miss everything about this place except the Arctic winters. So it's a little warmer than I thought it would be, though. So I only brought one coat, and I've been pretty warm thus far. Before I dive into it, I just want to thank FAN. I'm truly humbled and honored to be here in front of you, sharing the stage with some incredible folks I've had the chance to meet today. Sam, Dale, Lee, truly an honor to speak with you. There are several folks in the audience here that have really pushed me along in my journey that I'd like to briefly thank here. John Morrison, a Rhodes Scholar, a long-term Chicagoan, has really deeply inspired me in my latest journeys. Lieutenant Jeff Gray is 5 days back from his deployment to Afghanistan. Thank you so much for being here. Pat Moriarty has kept me strong 24 hours at a time through some morning reflections we share with each other. Thank you, Pat. Ted Gonder is the man behind MoneyThink that's been just an immense source of learning in my life. Thank you, Ted. Karen Gordon, a MoneyThink advisor, is also here. Wendy Irwin, these are ladies that have just deeply inspired my path and through my first company here. Also have to thank Wendy Beamer and Ed Beamer for hosting me last night. I'm coming from China. I haven't slept in like 4 days until 6 full hours last night, so beating the jet lag thanks to the Beamer family. Lastly, Lonnie Stonich has been an incredible figure in my life the last 3 years, a great advisor and donor to MoneyThink, the NGO I work on. An incredible lady who's really just shot me into the future. And thank you so much for hosting us and for being such a wonderful person in my life. I want to kick this off by telling you guys a couple stories from the spring of 2006, which, as I've reflected to prepare a couple remarks here, was really a turning point in my life. I was a junior in high school in the spring of 2006, and everything in my life seemed to be coming into place. I had recently won the Washington State Debate Championship, which was a goal that I'd been gunning for the entirety of high school. I had just made the varsity tennis team, which I was really excited about. I had qualified for this prestigious debate tournament, the Tournament of Champions. All was very, very well for me. I had some great friends. I had just met this cute girl that would be my high school girlfriend. All this was amazing. What I didn't know in April 2006 was that all of this was about to fall apart on me. I came back from a lot of travel for debate in order to prepare. I came back and was behind on my schoolwork, and I proceeded to score a 20% on my math midterm. which sank my math grade to a D minus. First time I'd seen a couple C's on the transcript, never a D. I get suspended from the tennis team before my first match. The coach announces Greg will no longer be playing with us in this match. Through the grapevine, everyone in my small high school finds out about this. This is a source of embarrassment. Very, very quickly, after I'm suspended from the tennis team, our class rankings come out, and I find that just because of my lack of motivation in my academics, I'm ranked 185th out of 360, which came as a, I'm gonna steal your water, Sam, thank you. Thank you in advance. I found myself in the bottom half of my class, which is disappointing. I knew that I was given some intelligence. I had just been diverting a lot of my attention elsewhere, but knew I could have been doing better, but I wasn't. And that came as a shocker. If only Dale Stevens had been able to tell me grades didn't matter, just 6 years ago, would have saved me. It would saved me a lot of stress at that moment. As all my friends are talking about these Ivy League institutions they're going to be attending, my counselor is telling me, we'll be very, very lucky to get you into a four-year school. Let's start talking about how we're going to tell this story. There's really a lot of stress to put on a 17-year-old that's trying to figure out where they're going in their life. It wasn't such a big deal, though. I had other things in my life I was looking forward to. I mentioned I had qualified for this debate tournament. I was one of two people from Washington to qualify. A lot of people thought I could do pretty well at this, and so I figured this is my chance to rebound. Let's go perform really well at the Tournament of Champions. And I go, and I don't do so hot. I end up finishing again in the bottom kind of quartile, letting a lot of people down, including myself, because I knew I could have done better. I didn't. I come back to the high school, and I should mention I was a two-term class president. I liked meeting people. I had some friends. I was aiming for the ASB presidency in my high school. And so I figured, oh God, this has been a terrible 6 weeks for me. It's all going to turn around right here. I'm the front runner. I can totally win this thing. I run for ASB president. I give a great speech, a lot of toilet humor. I sit down, feeling excellent about it. And my buddy from fourth grade, great guy named Josh, who's totally introverted, had a third of the friends I did. I thought I was totally in the bag. He gives a killer speech, and he wins in a landslide. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't get a runoff. Just straight up, I lose. You can get 75% of the vote. I'm thinking, what have I been doing here? And I'm feeling very, very low in all of this. And I reflect, I keep coming back home, and one real pillar in my life has really started to slip. And those aren't the sort of shiny recognitions I was aiming for. It was a man that had really guided 17 years of my life. My father and my granddad meant a ton to me. My dad's always been a phenomenal father to me. And my granddad lived with us for 6 years. He, unfortunately, during that spring, he suffered a stroke, and very, very quickly went from being an incredibly tough, hardy, brilliant guy, and really just slipping very, very quickly. He was a Depression-era teenager. He had to go work in a rock quarry at the age of 15 to support his widowed mother and his sister. Went to fight in the Marines in 1940, fought throughout the South Pacific, including Iwo Jima, becomes a wonderful businessman, a family man, a real hero to me. And as I was kind of facing some of the first real challenges in my life, that pillar was no longer there, where we sent him off to a home where he'd be better cared for than what my family could provide. And just really these sort of huge public failures that I thought I would nail, just totally biffed on each of them. And pairing that with this real pillar no longer being there, that foundational support. And that was really challenging. I didn't know where to turn. I had a wonderful community. I had excellent friends, loving parents, tons of support. I mentioned this cute girl. She stayed with me despite all these mess-ups. But that said, I didn't know where to turn. I kept my proud face, donned the armor. But really, the next 2-3 months were kind of a dark cloud of brooding. And the one place I could turn to was malt liquor and vodka, and trying to drown sort of the self-pity in that. And I want to spend the rest of my time kind of explaining how I went from late spring 2006 to where I am today, which I think is a healthier place. And it comes down to 3 basic principles that I want to share with you today. Strengthening your hull, building your fleet, and leaving your shore. you might pick up on the nautical theme, and that's to celebrate Lieutenant Gray's safe return from Afghanistan. A big reason why my granddad's loss was so tough for me is that I felt like a powerful 17-year-old. I was an athlete, I was using my brain. This was one thing I could do nothing about. This was a guy who had taken care of me since I could remember, that had just was losing day by day by day, and I had no ability to do anything about that. And that sense of powerlessness really hurt. And I learned though, I learned to strengthen my health. I learned how to kind of build some resiliency. I learned that actually through service. There was a veteran in my community, a man that served throughout Europe during the Second World War in the Army, who he had also suffered a stroke. And he was a man with a long-term business background in Seattle that really took great care in his yard. The man had a very nice yard that had just totally been overgrown because he was no longer able to care for it. And I was called, people knew me, I was a long-term landscaper on my small community. And I began tending his yard for him. And it was only through helping this man, kind of restoring his price. He would affectionately look out and smile at me as I would be weeding, trimming the hedges, splitting wood for him, making him firewood. All these basic things he used to do for himself to create pride in it, but he could no longer do. I was able to make that small contribution. And that really planted a seed in me of the sort of the power of each of us to do little things that can make someone's life a little bit better. And that little seed of service followed me as I went off to university a year thereafter. And it followed me where I met some incredible folks at university, including Ted, and we started a little not-for-profit organization that went off in the community. Again, on a very, very small scale initially, just people helping people. And I learned to strengthen my hull in that way, which was something that really has really followed me since then. I learned through these, through landscaping and splitting this wood, it gives you a lot of time to think as you're spending hour after hour after hour working on someone's yard, or you're painting, or you're pounding nails, hanging drywall, like I used to do as a carpentry apprentice. You have a lot of time to think in your mind, and that creates a lot of opportunity to reflect, to think about the path you aim to walk. Through those opportunities, I had some big ideas, and I realized that if you're willing to work for these things, you can achieve them. And I began writing these things down. A couple of years later, my fraternity brothers in college would make fun of me for Dear Diary, as they joke with me, but I came to call it my blog book, which is a slightly more masculine way of putting it. Gave me some confidence as a 19, 20-year-old to write these things, and I would chronicle some monthly goals I have, chronicle a little daily to-do list to keep myself accountable. And very quickly I realized I can achieve each of these little steps day in and day out, and over time you can create some significant momentum for yourself. And that was really my aim, and that helped me strengthen my health by developing some solid habits, these daily practices over time, and kind of marching forward into my future. And it was through that service, through those reflections, and through keeping yourself accountable there that I was able to do so. As you know, I thanked a few folks at the beginning of this, and these people have been instrumental in getting me to where I am at this moment. And I want to share a few of my ideas behind building your fleet. Your fleet are the people that are going to guide you in your own journey. Your fleet are the people that are going to care for you, that are going to nurture you, to encourage you. They're also going to call the bullshit when you're throwing it out there. They're the people that are going to keep you accountable. And it's absolutely crucial. Dale had a couple great points on this about finding mentors, and something that you're not taught in college, certainly, but something that I think explains a lot of the success that I've had, is that people that have just lived a lot more, people that have experienced a lot more, have been there and have invested a lot of their time, their efforts, their energy into helping me along. And it doesn't matter if you have a company and you're looking for advice on that company. It doesn't matter if you're looking for advice on how to study for a standardized exam, how to better do your homework, how to thinking about a career in the future, thinking about where to travel in your future. No matter what it is, there are folks out there that would love to help you. The first bit, you have to, fate favors the bold. You have to be willing to reach out and to ask. There have been many, many people that I've asked to meet up with me that I've been shocked that say yes. When I was a ruffian, wouldn't shave for a week, I had much longer hair back then. They would make time for me. And within 20, 30 minutes of a coffee, you can really build a real relationship with someone. And if you're diligent, if you follow up with those folks, if you ask for advice, and you get by, and over time, it's incredible what those relationships can mean for you. And that's something that's been a wonderful influence in my life are these wonderful people here in Chicago, as well as a few folks elsewhere that have helped guide me along in that. It's essential to build your fleet. And I remember distinctly, I had a friend in high school who was from one of the kind of very wealthy families in Seattle who told me how set he was. He was going to some great school. His family had all this cash. He was going to do some travel. And he told me that he also had some great connections. And I remember that moment thinking, wow, I wish I had any of this. It would be great if I had some money. It would be great if I were traveling. It would be great if I had gotten into a great school. I had been rejected from everywhere at this point. Because, as mentioned, I wasn't such a hotshot student. That said, I realized that it's always day one. At this very day, I can reach out to a few folks. I can begin building some friendships with some wonderful people. They can be the first ships in my fleet. And I became deliberate in that practice. And here, just a couple years later, it's been remarkable, the dividends there. And so I encourage all the young people in this audience, as well as all the old people. I think, to reach out to a few folks. When I'm at Starbucks, when I'm walking down the street, I try to say hi to people, because you never know when that one little conversation can lead to something incredible. And that's happened many, many times, including a few of the folks that I've mentioned earlier in this little talk. The third bit, and one that's really been a big difference for me in the last 2 years of my life, has been leaving your shore. When I say that, I mean that both in a literal sense. I spent the last 2 years living abroad, as well as I'm really drink this water that's spilling everywhere. I want to challenge everyone to seek opportunities to see more of the world, both getting outside your bubble here in this wonderful area north of Chicago, whether that means going overseas, looking for opportunities to study abroad during college, looking for overseas conferences, for fellowships, for travel grants, whether it's through a university, through a local not-for-profit organization, maybe it's through Rotary or your church. There are just plentiful opportunities, and I wish I had known about them earlier. I've traveled pretty extensively the last couple of years. I've visited 25 countries in the last 4 years, but before that, I didn't even have a passport because traveling can be really, really expensive, especially when you're making your money shoveling horse manure like I was. And but there are tons of opportunities, and I'd love to connect hereafter and share some specific tips and tactics for how you can find really thousands of dollars like I have to travel abroad. Because it's something that can really open up your world. Dale had a couple of great points on this that you really want to pursue. Figure out what you want to do, and university is always the best way to do so. I had 6 big aspirations when I went to college. I wanted to do everything from leading a hedge fund. So I get involved in an investment club. I go intern at an investment bank to learn about these things. I wanted to be the superintendent of Seattle Public Schools. And so I started working in student government to learn about bureaucracy and big budgets. I started an NGO that was working in space. I was concerned wanted to be a special forces commander in either the Army or the Navy, as Lieutenant Greg and Mr. Morrison here would like me to do. So I started training in the Marine Corps during the mornings before classes, just to get a taste of that. I wanted to be a technology entrepreneur, so I started working on a little technology project with some friends that gradually became a tech company I now work on. I wanted to be a professional mountain climber, so I started climbing. I started building myself as a professional mountain guide, which I now do in the summer. And so much of this is just taking those first steps, because it's always easier to keep going after you've taken those first, second, third steps. And encourage everyone here to set some ambitious goals for yourself. I'm personally inspired by big physical challenges. I really like to run, and for me, when I register for a race, a couple months down the line, it inspires me to begin training, because I know I'm gonna look and feel like a fool if at mile 5 of a marathon, I'm puffing and puffing and no longer able to keep going. In the same way, whether you like to run ultramarathons and climb mountains like me, or if you want to do better in school, you want to make more friends, you want to travel more widely, set very deliberate goals, purchase that plane ticket, get your passport, write that goal down and share it with someone. Because when we're walking this journey together, it's much, much easier. And as you leave your shore in your life, as you get outside your comfort zone, get off your campus, it's incredible what you can do. And one thing that has really stuck with me and inspired me, both as a runner and as a young thinker here, has been the C. Prefontaine adage that to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. I believe each of us have been endowed with countless gifts, and it's up to us to make the most of those. So each and every day you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself. Because I guarantee you, most everyone here is in a more favorable spot both emotionally and maturity-wise than I was certainly in the spring of 2006. So if I can turn things around, I assure you that you can as well. Definitely look forward to connecting with anyone who would like to chat after the game as well. Thank you.
Hey guys. Thanks for having me tonight. Lonnie, I have to just say you've gone from this little avatar on your Recorded, which is a plugin on Gmail, and I just see this little image that Ted connected me to like this dynamic lady that I can't wait to continue to know. So thank you for having me, and all your people, and you guys are completely lovely. So thanks for having me tonight and listening to some crazy things I might say. Okay, so I got less than 20 minutes, 8:27, here we go. So just to start off, unlike Dale, I grew up in a family where neither of my parents went to college. My dad, awesome guy, super smart, didn't even finish high school. And so when it came time for me to have to go to school, to college, it wasn't even an option. And I really didn't want to go. I hated school as it was. I really liked running a company. I wanted to start something else. So they told me you have to. I knew it was one of those things that I shouldn't have bothered debating. So I said, okay, here are my criteria. I have to be in New York City, because I'm obsessed with the city and you never let me go. I have to be able to study whatever I want, whenever I want. And I have to be able to change disciplines if I so choose. And so I only knew of one school called NYU. And so I started Googling it, and this program came up called Gallatin, School of Individualized Study. So I could mesh government, business, nonprofit missions, all of it together. And so I submitted a bunch of applications to all these other schools that everyone was talking about, got into NYU, and that's all I really cared about. So there I go. From there, I didn't see any other entrepreneurs. And so I started building entrepreneurial communities. And what that led to was me realizing that you have to know what you need. And so for me, that was similarly minded people. And so this tracks me back to high school. In high school, I was so angsty and unhappy with what was going on around me because I was building things that I thought were important and meaningful and didn't see anyone else, none of my peers, doing the same thing. I would run my store. I had a clothing store. I don't know how that happened. Crazy. For 3 years. Then on the weekends, I would go and I would run an animal shelter. I would do a Saturday program for kids. I would volunteer at the nursing home. All these crazy things, and I couldn't understand how nobody cared about those really important things in our society, or even like my sponsor child in Ecuador who I used to send my chore money to. But then people didn't also care about creating things in their own communities, like innovative, cool technologies that I had no ability to do. So the second I got to NYU, that's what I went and set out to do. I wanted to continue to protect this stream of thinking that I always had in high school and was so protective of. And I also wanted to find other people with that similar stream of thinking. And so you're probably like, what is the stream of thinking? So this unconscious stream of thinking that happens is the thinking that goes on when you stop for a second and listen to what's in your head. So how often do you guys just pause, stare at a wall, go outside, climb a tree, and just think about all those things that are happening in your head, not the things that your friends are telling you, not the things that are going on in the news, but maybe the thing that made you happy today, or that little nuance that you picked up on in the way the person treated the guy at the post office. Those little things, they really matter, and they let you tap into what you believe in as a person, how you perceive the world, and what you think the world should be and can be, and they also help you figure out how to get there. And so, let me just catch up on my notes because I skip all over the place, and I don't want to miss a beat here. So, in short, I'm here today. I've accepted this invitation back in November. Super excited that I can talk to not only parents, but students. I love speaking with students because I'm here for a selfish reason, and I'm here for a greater good reason. I want you guys to turn into people who more consciously think about what's going on in your head, and you take time to listen to what makes you curious and passionate, so that way kids like me in high school have friends. Because I was very angry and angsty the whole time. You would talk to me and meet me, and I was super friendly and nice, and I would raise any money that we needed. I was like the president of all these clubs, But secretly, I was very upset with you for not doing good things for the world. And I didn't know how to tell you that or get you on my team. And since then, I've worked on those abilities so I can be a leader and help get in touch with people like you and get you to do cool things that I think are good and ultimately you hopefully believe are too. So that's why I'm here. So this all boils down to accepting and tapping into your curiosity and listening to that internal thinking, taking responsibility for what you believe in and want to see, and then building communities around you to really help you achieve that and retain who you are. So there's this thing that you'll see 100 times in your life, and it's this little, I don't even know if it's a quote, it's just a statement. You are the sum of the people, the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So for me, that is the top 40 people on my speed dial. I have 40 of them, not 5, because I can't choose, right? And I'm constantly finding cool new people, so I just add them into my speed dial. And I have this thing called sidewalk time. It doesn't always end up being sidewalk time, but I try and call all of them or speak to them at least once a week. It's a pretty big list, but I've realized that these people are the most important people, and they leave an impact on me that I'm okay with, I'm comfortable with, and I want more of. So that helps me grow in the direction that I want to. Time check, we're 5 minutes in. So, okay. All right, I just speak, crazy things come out. But so in short, our world, we need more of these types of people who can listen, take what's around them, put it back out, and make things happen. So entrepreneurship, that's kind of been my realm. I'm like this girl that runs around talking about entrepreneurship, knows how to start things, gets people excited about it. But why entrepreneurship matters is because we see things that we love or we want to exist and actually help bring them to scale. And so there's a great quote that our friend David, I'm friends with a lot of people in the audience, and our friend David put this quote out. He has a company, and it's a way of marketing, and it's my background on my phone. And it says, if you don't build your dreams, someone else will hire you to build theirs. That's totally fine. That's okay, because we need jobs, and not everyone can be a founder. But don't take a job unless you believe in the mission of the job. How do you know if you believe in the mission of the job? You have to listen to what you're curious about and what you're passionate about and take that winded path. And so let's get onto the topic of education. You can't fall, right? We are so lucky. I grew up in New York, really nice family. Grandma lived with me. Somehow I ended up at NYU. You guys go to this excellent high school, probably one of the top in Illinois. You've got amazing people around you, hopefully a really stable family situation. You can't fall. You could take a risk and you would have a background to pick you up and support you again. So the way you are now, you can try different things. And that doesn't mean that I'm telling you not to go to college. I went to college kind of out of an obligation, took a semester off. You could take a gap year. You could work with Dale and try his gap program. A gap year is going off for a year before you go to school and thinking about other things that help you figure it out. But the reason why you need to think about college and alternatives to education is because college isn't an end-all, be-all. There's more beyond that. You don't just go to college and after it, something else happens. You have to use college effectively to figure out what you want, what you think should happen, how to get there, what you love, right? So the real goal is happiness. You just have to be happy, and so this is continuous. I'm going to keep saying these words: curiosity, passion, community, happiness. They're all intertangled. So let me just catch up here. The world needs ambitious thinkers. That will be us, right? Because we're going to listen and tap into that. And so here are some reasons why you should slow down and listen to those crazy things in your mind. And it might take you time to get there and to let these thoughts come to the surface, but you'll be happier, you'll have more confidence, you'll have an identity of yourself. You can ask me who I am, and I know my strengths and my weaknesses, and I'll even tell you a little bit more about where I keep them in a second. They're all in the front of this notebook, and I put them in the front of every notebook I start. You'll have a clear understanding of your desires. You will be a friendlier person, and people will want to engage with you because they'll sense something special in you. You'll be more insightful and understand the nature of humans and how they work and how to work with them. So how do you chart your own course? First thing is surrounding yourself with the correct people, right? You don't have to start a company. You could. Starting a company sometimes happens naturally. You set out with a mission, you have a superior product, hopefully you're working on something that's meaningful and you're not just shipping things in from China or something like that, but those are great practices at learning skills in business. Either way. You listen to yourself, you start making lists. One of my favorite things is on Google Chrome, you drop down all your bookmarks, it tells me everything I'm interested in because I'm keeping track of those things. So try and keep track of those things for yourself. Take your iPhone, there's these great apps. Thingist, I think, is one of them. It's like, Lonnie recommended me a book earlier. I opened up this app and I put it there. So now I know where all the books are. They're not in my notebook and then in my notes app and in my email. Keep track of things that really, really matter to you. Be healthy and exercise. Organize everything, like I just said, and do what feels right. Intuition is totally underrated. I know I'm kind of being like this crazy girl that's going all over the place and talking about all these really mushy, gooey things, but trust me, 4 years ago, I definitely wouldn't have. I was a tightwad, and I didn't, I was very, very closed off and had my own missions, but now I'm trying to unlock something crazy in all of you, I would hope. So from there, charting your own course means listening to yourself. It means making work what needs to work. So I chose NYU. It hasn't always worked. But I've used the opportunity to, like Greg said, reach out to people that I constantly want to be in touch with, take the money that they offer me and give back to students and make cool stuff with it, invite speakers in that I would never get to meet otherwise, snatch opportunities and fly to other countries, come here and skip class, have a teacher write a really mean email to me. So here, I'll tell you about a really cool email that I just got. Samantha, you didn't submit your paper before you left. You need to respect me, your classmates, Plato, and your secret double life. Okay, so that's fine, no big deal. Completely agree, it was disrespectful of me to not submit the paper. But then I go to class, submit 3 papers, did extra work, submit 3 papers, and she tells me you're trying to be like Sheryl Sandberg, and you're not doing it all. And I'm like, listen, sometimes the chips fall off the table, right? You can't win everything, you're going to fail at some things, and I think part of that is you have to take that chance. So sometimes I don't finish everything perfectly, and that's okay. You have to accept that. And so one thing I learned freshman year was you can take on a whole lot of things, and you might not finish them all, and you have to let some of them go. So as you chart your own course, don't be afraid to let go of things that no longer interest you. Think about what's around you and make use of things that don't seem like this water bottle might be placed here, and it looks like it's meant for you to drink, but maybe it's really meant to water a plant. So you have to think about things in a different way. And that's how you can create companies, because you see opportunities where there isn't one. And so just to give you a quick snippet on my company, we're trying to make money by serving entrepreneurs to create more entrepreneurs. And I can tell you all about that if you email me. My email is samsmith@nyu.edu. So let's just tap into the adult's role, because this is really interesting. You're an adult sitting here, you really care. This is obviously a really intelligent community, and you guys come out and you learn about all different perspectives to take care of each other and to nurture your hometown and people. So the first thing you could do by being an adult is something that a guidance counselor and a Spanish teacher did for me. I was super independent as a senior all throughout high school. I always thought I was pretty independent. And sometimes you bottle things up. Students bottle things up. You have these brilliant kids. They don't talk about things because they're not tapping into that unconscious thinking, right? And so one day, I don't even know what was going on. I was just not there. And my teacher could tell. So he sent me to the guidance office. And I'm like, what is this? Why do I have to go to the guidance office? And I literally just sit there. I'm with my guidance counselor, Miss Mia, she's a really good friend of mine, love her to death. Just sitting there, she's doing her work, and all of a sudden I just start bawling tears. And I don't really cry. And I don't know what's going on. She doesn't know what's going on. I'm kind of laughing, and I'm really crying again, and I'm all over the place. And we just realized I was really stressed out with the store that I was running, and too many things were falling, and I wasn't able to catch them all, and I was stressed. And this is how stress was manifesting itself in me. And somehow, Senor Lopez picked up on it, he sensed it, and he took care of me, so I wasn't embarrassed as I cried in front of my AP Spanish class. So your role as an adult is to sometimes sense things that we are not emotionally mature enough to realize in ourselves. Providing guidance when not asked. As that crazy teenager that I described to you, I often didn't take anyone's advice. I analyzed everything for myself. took everything with a blank slate, and that meant that you could recommend something to me and I wouldn't take your advice for 6 months until I figured out that it was the right advice. So still push that advice, because that's how a teen is, right? They need this advice from people with prior experience, and you can't give up on us. My mom loves to just like put things on the table and walk away and never come back to them again. And for me, that's been okay, but I've seen it not be so great for my sisters. And so now I pick up the slack there. So we all figure these things out, right? Ask thought-provoking questions. I love my mom to death, and she serves for different reasons, but my dad is the one who always talked about these questions with me. I loved astronomy, and my dad would always talk about the sun, the stars, the moons, all these different, the tides with me, and that was amazing. And it would be 11:30, and my mom would try and push me off to bed, and he would stay there and answer these questions for me. And little did I know that he had educated himself from the Discovery Channel. So, like, you can find sources of information everywhere, like Dale said, and Google became my best friend. I had all these crazy interests. Khan Academy didn't exist yet. Google was my best friend when I was younger, and I went off to school, thankfully, knowing some things that I wasn't taught in high school, that I could stand on my feet and have conversations with kids in the hallway and be like, wow, I do belong here. So ask those thought-provoking questions to teens. Not just how did you feel today, but what did you think about that specific moment in a play? Or did you pick up on this action that someone took? Both of you, students, sons, daughters, and adults, peel a layer back and take a layer of insecurity away. I think we're all afraid to say things out loud, how we're feeling, what we're thinking, and I'm trying to get to the point here that before you can figure out what you want out of an education or what you want to create, you need to be at home with yourself and at peace with yourself. And so one of the best things that we can do for each other is to challenge each other emotionally and kind of peel back these layers of insecurity. And I'm doing this all the time with my sisters. They're twins, their names are Emily and Nicole. I'll constantly ask them questions that they have never stopped to think about and make them feel really uncomfortable. And I'll just leave it there and come back later, and then they're ready to talk about it. And I wish someone had done that for me. So please ask each other really hard questions. Demand flexibility for your student or your child in whatever program they pursue. So my friend Stacy started a company, somehow crazily got Richard Branson to give her $1 million, obviously for equity. And she really needed to take off from school and go run her company. Like crazy, right? So her brother's running it, she needs to drop out, she's been at NYU for a year, she kind of likes it, but whatever, this company is way cooler. And her parents are constantly battling her. She eventually takes leave, and they will only give her 1 year. So we worked with her to negotiate for 2 years. But her parents should have helped her negotiate for 2 years, right? So say you go to a program that's not as flexible as my program, and you can't take off a year. You turn to your parents, and parents help your students and your children. And maybe it's not just taking off time from school, but it's other little nuances, like not completing a science credit because you really just hate science and you really want to take another theater credit, or finding that funding from your provost when they can't seem to dig out another $500 to help you pay for a flight somewhere. Like help each other demand flexibility in whatever you do, because ultimately we are humans and we created these rules, and now we have to live with some old rules from some other century. We need to rewrite them. It's the same thing with government, and that's why I love government. We need to bring government up to speed, but demand flexibility for the people that you represent. And then just bringing it home, create people that are priceless, right? It takes time, but we need to all take care of each other in the sense that we create people that will stand up for what they believe in and have come to a really nice way. They have really put thought into what they believe in. They took time to get to that boiled down point. And you can always iterate your beliefs, but you need to go about your life with these intuitions and gut values that you've already predetermined. And so let's help create people that are priceless and capable, not just capable, but actionable to go on what they believe in. So that way we can constantly innovate. I think it was earlier Lee, you said something to us along the lines of the people who created today. It was something with innovation. What was this line? It was the people that live today must innovate for tomorrow or they must innovate in some way. So basically, let me put it in my own words. You, because I can't repeat it, I have the worst memory in the world. I take ginkgo and it still doesn't work. So the people who created yesterday, if we go through their system of how they were educated, we're going to create the same thing. And it's obvious that the world is changing and that we want different things, so we have to educate ourselves differently. There's no figurehead, Michelle, who got fired, there's no one that's changing it right now systemically for us, so we have to alter what we have, and we have to work with what we have, and we have to set out on our own paths. So whether that means going to college or not, just be aware of what you're putting yourself through and use your time really efficiently. And so I'll leave you one last thing. Being the best you is not just good for you. It's not just good for me as a high school student and the other kid in the corner who's freaking lonely. It's really good for our country. Being the best you, knowing yourself inside and out, makes leaders. And like Lee showed you on that chart, leaders can make anything happen because they snatch opportunity. Leadership is up for grabs everywhere. You create it for yourself. It's not something that someone gives to you, right? Everything I've ever done, I've made myself because everyone always told me no. No is the biggest driving factor. Make it your biggest driving factor. And please be a leader because our country needs leaders all the time, not now more than ever. We always will need leaders. And we need you as leaders who know yourself inside and out, are willing to get vulnerable with each other and take care of each other and call each other out, to continue to make more leaders and to make systems and structures that are editable for the future and grow with us. And so I hope you follow me on this path. I'm finished. Thank you.